Hey folks, John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter here, and welcome to another episode of Stop the Scam. Gotta say, our good friend and co-host Kate Price is not able to hang out with us today. She's got some stuff going on, but I've got my good friend Jenny in a bottle hanging out with us. How you doing, Jenny?
Good. How are you?
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to have some good discussions about scammers out there today. We might even hear a familiar name or two coming up. Hang on.
Oh,
Welcome to the Double Broker Bounty Hunters Stop the Scam. Here are your hosts, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, John Cantera, and Dispatch Kate, Caitlin Price.
Another one bites the dust, and another one.
I'm not Caitlin.
Yes. Well, you are today. It's just so Kate in a bottle, or Jenny in a price. But no, it is good to have you out here, and glad you're able to take some time to hang out with us while we talk fraud in the industry. And I got to tell you, it's just seems to be getting worse by the day, and I am watching good carriers go bad very quickly. Desperation calls on people to do some very desperate things, but you don't always have to be desperate. If you're in this business, whether you're a veteran or you're new, your key to survival is knowing your costs, and the best way to manage your costs is through AccuBid Pro.
Tired of spending hours bidding on loads and second-guessing your profits? Introducing AccuBid Pro, the mobile app designed for the everyday owner-operator. We simplify load bidding, making it fast, accurate, and stress-free. Know your operating costs up front to ensure every load is profitable. Plus, for a limited time, enjoy a 30-day free trial. Stop guessing and start earning. Download AccuBid Pro today, available now in the App Store. Bid better with AccuBid Pro.
I'm live.
Wow, and you've disappeared. So I imagine you're still there. I can hear you. Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been very focused on over the last 2 weeks is container volume, particularly off of the West Coast. And we know that tariffs have had a huge impact on container volume on the West Coast. And of course, last week, the administration has rolled back some of those tariffs on a temporary basis. So now we're waiting to see when that freight is going to start coming back. Economics and supply chain will sit there and tell you that we're looking at about 2, maybe 3 months before we start seeing that freight come back in, between ordering whatever it is that they're ordering out of China, getting it manufactured, put onto a boat, bring it over into the U.S., and then distribution. So the freight freight recession that we're going through, we'll call it freight recession 2.0 that we're going through right now, is going to hang with us for a little bit. But how bad is it actually going to get? Now that tariffs are being lifted, I think we're seeing more retailers actually starting to move freight again within the country, that freight that's already here, instead of sitting on it, stockpiling it for the best possible time to put it to market. And things will keep moving. So perhaps that is not going to be as bad a hit as it was before. The question is going to be is how long will this temporary pause stay in effect? Will it actually go away after the 90 days as originally discussed? Who knows? But it does breed questions about desperate carriers and desperate brokers, and then them doing unseemly things as a result of that desperation. And I do think that when good guys go bad, it is desperation driven, and it may very well be temporary, but then it grows, it festers like a cancer, and it gets worse over and over and over again. What we tend to see, and what Jenny is here to talk to us about today, are carriers who are now trying to find ways to cut corners and be able to make money. And they're doing all sorts of fancy creative ways to do that. You all may remember my good frenemy, Sean Mabe, Hi, Sean. In case you still watch, as I know you do from time to time, I know that Sean is launching yet another chameleon carrier. We are doing a deep dive on that right now. We'll be able to put more information out on them very soon. We'll probably do a special report on it later this week. But we do see Sean Mabe is creating yet another entity.
He's bleeding into my environment now.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I had a carrier call me the other day about him.
Yeah. So, yeah, Sean, you're still out there and you're still doing bad things. We know it. And we're just keeping that list going. Now, you may not have heard from somebody yet who's been knocking on your door to ask questions. Don't worry. They're still gathering information. They'll come for you soon enough.
Bad boys, what you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah, don't I know it. So
we can have the insurance guy on to help us out.
now you have been dealing from a collection standpoint and come across some other carriers who are doing a lot of the same things that Sean is doing. So what have you been seeing? Jenny?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So what have you been
I'm
seeing?
here.
Well, what have you been seeing in this?
1 second.
I need to get the Jeopardy theme song integrated into this. Do 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 do.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, you're unfrozen, so I think we're good. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Everything's okay. Me? Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me? My mic's turned all the way up. Hey, Sage, I know you're watching. You hearing us okay? Hello, Sage. He was watching. Anyway, are you? Am I the one who's locking up? Or Jenny, is it you? Oh, this is always fun. Okay. So I think Jenny is frozen. I am not entirely sure. I don't see her moving at all. Bottom line is, okay. Thanks for confirming that, Sage. Okay, so while Jenny tries to get her stuff squared away, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the things that we've been hitting on. What we are seeing a lot of right now are the scammers who, oh, there she is. She popped back up backstage.
Really bad storms here last night, so I think we have some water in the lines or something.
Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, so what I was asking before is we were seeing a lot of things like Sean Mabe happening. What have you been seeing?
So on the collection side, normally we see a lot of carriers that are bringing us brokers that are defrauding them or are becoming insolvent. But what I'm really seeing a lot more of in the last month or two is a lot of leased on carriers, leased on drivers, leased on the carrier companies, and those carrier companies not paying them. A lot of the people out there, they've folded their own authority. They've put their authority up on the shelf because they're not making any money, so they would join up with a bigger carrier that hires drivers, and they're not looking at the contract well. They're not checking that contract over. They're not vetting that carrier to see what kind of business they're doing. Are there other reports of non-payment? Do they have a good solid good solid lanes with good freight? They're not checking them out very thoroughly at all. They're just jumping into them, hoping that they're gonna be caught up in that net, and they're getting defrauded from those predatory carrier companies.
Yeah, the worst part is that this is on purpose. We are seeing a lot of carriers out there who are bringing on these owner operators. They got these ads going out on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, and they're advertising these amazing revenue projections. We're talking box trucks and hot shots at $7,000-8,000 a week in gross revenue. Dry vans at $9,000 to $10,000 a week, and anyone who's been in this business, that's impossible. That's utterly impossible. It's not happening. And believe me, if there's a carrier out there who's watching this who is actually generating that much revenue, please reach out to me, because I want to bring you on the show. I want to hear exactly how the hell you're able to do it, because it's not happening if you operate even half your business off of the spot market, because the spot market is absolutely total crap right now. I just don't get it. So one of the cautions that I have for anybody out there who's looking to shut down their own carrier and move in and work with another carrier instead, when there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with trying to cut the costs and get away from the regulatory BS. Let somebody else worry about the regulatory stuff. But when you go to do that, you have to pay very, very close attention to who it is that you're signing on with. What exactly are you getting yourself into? And for the love of God, read the dang contract, because the contract is where these guys are getting. When we have people getting defrauded, there are all sorts of excuses threaded throughout the contracts that actually give these carriers the ability to deny payment. And they rest on their contract to justify non-payment situations. And that's when they're really being bold about it, by the way. A lot of times they just sit in the wings and just wait the 2-3 weeks until you realize, oh, well, we're not going to get paid, so I'm going to quit. And, oh, wait a minute, there's some contractual language on the back end of the contract that sits there and says, oh, well, if you quit the contract early, we keep everything that you've made.
So what I'm noticing is that carriers aren't, drivers are not making sure that the carrier they're leased onto is the carrier that's on the paperwork. So that there's an instance of somebody had an authority with a partner, and that authority dissolved. They created a new authority that the driver leased on with the second authority, but all of the rate cons were in the name of the first authority. That's one instance of it. I had another instance where a carrier was told they didn't have enough. Their authority wasn't new enough. We see that happen a lot. They don't have a new enough authority. They're not able to get loads by many brokers, and so their dispatcher said, "Well, just check in as this company right here." Then they didn't get paid. How do you recourse back to that? You can't. The broker or the shipper paid whoever they hired, which was that company they checked in under, but the company they checked in under did not pay them.
We're seeing this far too often, and there are too many people out there. I've got stuff going on in my ear at the same time. Sorry. There is so much going on, and I think a lot of it comes from the fact that a lot of these new owner operators, carriers turned owner operators, trying to lease on with somebody, they don't understand the rules. I don't think they understand the rules. And it may have been originally that the carrier who's recruiting these owner operators didn't understand all the rules, but it has since evolved into an innocent omission to a flat out, I'm going to steal from these owner operators. And that's what it's turned into. One of the things
owner operators have to have some onus on this themselves. They have to vet these carrier companies well. They have to know who they're partnering with. I mean, you wouldn't just give me your money. I mean, if you don't know me, so why are you giving it to some other stranger? I mean, if you just want a pocket to put it in, I got one. But I mean,
oh yeah, no, I'll gladly take your money. I'll take your money. I'd be happy to take it.
But you've got to protect your own assets. You've got to protect your own business. I said assets, by the way, just in case that didn't come out right. You got to protect your own assets, and you got to protect your own business. And I don't know what's wrong with people. It goes back to the whole education thing. After you get your CDL, you need a week worth of business training, because they have no idea what to look for in these contracts, apparently, and these carrier companies are taking advantage of them, or they're just lazy and deciding not to, and then when they get bit, they want somebody to bail them out, and it's hard to do that. There's nothing that I can leverage against those companies other than just reporting them to the credit reporting bureaus, which that takes a while to catch up to them before it really impacts them hard.
And it's volume.
I mean, Sean
It's
Mabe's
also
been doing it for how
fine.
long, and it's still doing it. So
Yeah, I've been chasing Sean Mabe since what, April of last year. It's the first time we reported about him. We have some 64 different owner operators that we know of who have been swindled by this guy.
and I've had
But
people
in
calling me.
every single case, every single one, they didn't read the contract. They didn't vet the carrier. And they just jumped in blindly because, let's face it, Sean Mabe's an American guy with an American accent, and they automatically assumed everything was good. Well, let me help you carriers out there. Okay, let me help you owner operators out there. There is one place you can go that can help you cut through all the crap in the shortest time possible. And that's 49 CFR 376.12. This is the regulation that identifies all of the things that must be in place in order for a lease on situation to exist. And all of these things need to be in the contract. So, I mean, this right here, just it only takes about 5 minutes at most to read this regulation. But this regulation is so critical to owner operators who are looking for somebody to lease onto. And I don't think, Jen, that people are paying any real attention to what it is they're doing out there. I think everyone's focus is, I
Can you
got to
tell
make
us what
money.
that says?
I got to feed my family. I got to keep a roof over their head. And they just jump right in with both feet, expecting to get paid. And I'm
Blind.
sorry.
So what does that say? That CFR 376. What?
376.12. 376.12 is the leasing regulation, and there's several components to it. One of the first things that comes up is exclusive possession of the equipment. And what that means is that, and all this has to appear in the contract in some form or some way. That if you are an owner operator and you lease onto a carrier, then you exclusively operate for that carrier. You don't just go off and do your own side project on your own DOT number, or go work for a different carrier for a week or what. No, it does not work that way. Once you're leased on, you are leased on. Your equipment and you as labor now belong to that carrier, and you operate at their control. So, in fact, the regulation allows for that carrier to then sublease the owner operator even further. So, I mean, but you as the owner operator, you don't get a choice. You don't get a choice to sit there and say, no, today I'm going to run for you. Tomorrow I'm going to run for this guy. The next day I'm going to run for that guy. It doesn't work that way. Yet there are some carriers out there who sell their MC number to operate under on a day-to-day basis, and it does not work that way, guys. There's a term length of the contract, and it is exclusive use, and that needs to be stressed. The regulation also speaks to compensation and how that compensation is spelled out. Again, it has to be spelled out clearly in the contract, either a percentage of gross, rate per mile, or a variable rate. However it is going to be defined, it must be defined in the contract. So owner operators, read your contracts. What is actually being leased? The equipment itself, responsibility for markings, because that's been another thing we've been seeing a lot of. And I've been getting a lot of calls, specifically dealing with freight guards, because markings on the truck have been wrong. Let's set the record straight. If you are running for a specific carrier, you must have their DOT number on the side of your truck. You cannot have their DOT number and then your DOT number underneath it. You can't have multiple DOT numbers on a truck.
Don't paper with duct tape on there either, because that people are automatically going to assume you're doing something fraudulent, because that's what we see in dishonest carriers a lot of times. Make sure you put those numbers on properly.
I think we've all seen that viral video of the guy sitting there and and putting new DOT numbers over top of the old one and peeling an old one off, exposing one underneath it. You can't do that, guys. Okay. Remove the lettering, put the new company's lettering on, and leave it be. Now, that's not to say you can't take your name, Joe's Trucking, off the side of the truck. It's your truck. You're proud of it. You've got it detailed the way you like it detailed. You got your flame decals all over it, and it's really fancy and all. There is nothing wrong with branding yourself as a driver. It's your truck. But you need to have the carrier's DOT number on the side of that truck in order to be legal. It's an absolute must. But folks, the contract should specify how they remove it, who removes it, who pays for it, and et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead, Jenny.
And if they're telling you to check in under another name other than the carrier you're leased onto, they're telling you if you're leased onto, ABC Trucking, and they're telling you to check in as Bob's Trucking, you can't do that. Something's wrong there. It should make you question it immediately. Stop checking in under names you're not leased onto. Stop checking in under names that aren't yours. If you're direct with the broker, don't. If a broker tells you check in, don't check in under somebody else's name. That is a red flag. Stop doing that.
And I understand there are legitimate broker TMSs out there that automatically generate the BOLs and list the broker as the carrier. Guys, if your brokerage uses one of these TMSs, stop. Please, for the love of God, stop. Get it reprogrammed. Okay? Because all you're doing at the end of the day, and I think Jenny would agree with me here, all you're doing at the end of the day is as a broker, you're putting yourself under the liability gun by declaring yourself as
it's not legal for you to do that either.
As a carrier. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a huge problem. And then when you try to hold the carrier accountable for something that ended up happening, but the carrier's name's not on the BOL.
Or when that carrier's coming to me to get paid and the carrier's name's not on the BOL, it's hard for me to get them paid because they're like, well, your client's name isn't on this paperwork anywhere. Who are you?
One of the things that I always recommend to carriers out there is a stamp. Have yourself a self-inking stamp, and you stamp a color other than black. Okay, I would recommend blue. Stamp every single copy of the BOL when you're at the shipper, and then sign it. Okay, and make sure that stamp needs to include the driver's name spelled out. It needs to include the carrier company name spelled out. It needs to have the carrier company DOT number and MC number on there. Very clear for everyone to see, because if there's an issue, and if you have a scammer who's out there who double brokered the load, who's going to use Adobe or whatever to try to doctor the BOL, so they can try to claim payment on it, it'll foil the plan. Because what typically happens, at least what happened when I was a shipper, was I took copies of the original BOLs with the signatures, and I sent them to the brokers every single day. At the end of every day, each broker got a stack of whatever BOLs for whatever loads went out under their name that day. And they can compare those documents to the POD. And if that shipper signature is not in the same place, if that stamp that the carrier used is not the same color in the same place, then Mr. Broker, don't pay it. Investigate it. Figure it out, because you might end up paying the wrong person. And we've seen that happen.
If you don't have a self-inking stamp, use a different colored ink pen.
That helps too.
Use a different colored ink pen, because a lot of times they'll ask for the paperwork. I've had scam companies call, like, we've held out the paperwork specifically so that they couldn't get paid on the load because we thought they were fraudulent, and then that fraudulent company called the receiver and got a copy of the paperwork. The copy of the paperwork that they get is going to be in black and white, but your copy has the color sign on it, and that will show that you have the original signed paperwork.
And you got to be careful, especially if someone's trying to settle a dispute, because one of the things I recommend to brokers when they're trying to settle a dispute when it comes to a BOL is if you have multiple people trying to claim that they've delivered the BOL, have all parties send you the actual document. Now, there's two reasons why this works out well. One, only one of them is actually going to send you the real document, because there's only one real document. Okay, so that'll help sort itself out in a hurry. But if both end up sending you something, then Mr. Broker, all you have to do is figure out which one is a scanned photocopy, or scanned copy, whatever, and which one's the actual thing that actually has pen and ink on it. The one with actual pen and ink on it is the one that wins. Okay, it's usually the one that's got the coffee mug stain on it, maybe a blot of mustard in the corner. That's the one.
Dirty boot print.
Or the dirty boot print.
Where they dropped it on the
floor. The one that's really messy is usually the right one. But the other thing that it does is that I really have to point out: if you are asked as a carrier to send that document in, whatever you do, that document is the one document that you get paid off of, and you're not so easy to want to surrender it, right? Jenny, am I lying here? Most carriers, they don't want to give that document away. So if a broker insists on you doing that because they're trying to determine who the real carrier is, insure the document when you ship it. Send it FedEx, UPS, U.S. Postal Service, but insure it. And with signature required, all that good stuff. Insure it, and insure it for the amount of your rate confirmation. That way, if it gets lost in the mail, then you file a claim against U.S. Postal Service or against FedEx and get paid through them. Yes, it's a longer process, but at least you're going to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Guys,
also,
it's just great.
I've had people when they've got the different colored ink signature on it and they ask for the original paperwork. I've had conversations with those brokers saying, obviously, if you have a scanned color copy, you see that this is inked in red or inked in green or whatever other color it is. Obviously, that this carrier has the original paperwork. That I have it in my possession right here. And so a lot of times they won't then force us to send the original paperwork. They'll take the copy of it because it's got the colored signature on it that shows it's the original paperwork, and they can compare it to the black and white one that they have.
There's a lot of different ways to forgive the term, skin the cat. But brokers, there are ways to resolve it. But that very first checkpoint is, what did the original BOL from the shipper look like versus what does the POD that was submitted look like? And if there's anything different, anything that was on the original shipper BOL that's not on the POD, question it. Question the shit out of it. Because we all know that these scammers live and die by doctoring paperwork. We see it all the time. I want to get back to that list because there's more under this lease items statute that I wanted to go ahead and hit up. Not just how markings are dealt with at the start and the end of the lease. A receipt for equipment. This is one of my favorite ones. When I was a carrier, and I know this regulation's been out there for years and years. It's been there for decades. Okay. When I was a carrier, I actually had 2 flatbeds that were leased onto me. Well, at the end of my lease, there was a receipt page. It was kind of like an on hire, off hire receipt. And when it went on lease, they had to write down the VIN number. We took a picture of it. We had to put the odometer reading on there, the date, time, and both parties signed on receipt to the carrier. And that's the moment that the carrier takes over the equipment. Well, when the equipment goes off hire or goes off lease, you do the same thing on the same page. So that receipt goes both ways. And oh, by the way, that receipt is what I turn into the insurance company to take them off the insurance and all that good stuff. I've never, in all the cases I've worked where there's been an issue between an owner-operator and a carrier, never have I seen a receipt transferring equipment from one party to the other in any of those cases. Yet that's one of the things that's out there as an item as part of the lease process. Identifying who's responsible for paying fuel, taxes, empty mileage, permits, etc. Most carriers assume that responsibility, but that must be spelled out in the contract. Owner-operators, be looking for this type of language in the agreement. You have to forgive me. I'm actually referencing back to one of my fraud prevention episodes from a couple of weeks ago. I've got the slide deck open here on my other screen. Payment periods. This is another fun one. Now, I don't know what you saw, Jenny, but when I was first dealing with this Sean Mabe issue, usually 2 weeks in is usually when we start to see people complaining about pay. For the record, the regulation states that the owner-operator must be paid by the carrier within 15 days of the receipt of load documents. That is by regulation. So how that is addressed in the contract, it could be faster, but it can't be slower. You got to pay within 15 days. If you're an owner-operator out there and you're working for a carrier and you're questioning whether or not your carrier is a scammer, if you submitted that POD to them and it's been 3 weeks or more, you're working with a scammer. That's a promise because they're in direct violation of this regulation. The contract should also specify withholding terms. If at the end of the lease, it has to identify the conditions in which any funds would be held. It would also identify any other specific requirements on the termination. Like if the owner operator is provided an ELD by the carrier, they may sit there and say, well, you have to turn in the ELD to get your final paycheck. That's perfectly legal to say that, but it has to be spelled out in the contract. Must be there. Let's see here. Chargebacks. If there's going to be any kind of chargeback against the carrier, that needs to be identified in the contract also. And all these cases, all 64 cases with Sean Mabe, they had no idea what their chargebacks were. Chargebacks were not specified in the contract. And that's been an ongoing issue. So they're wondering why they're not getting paid for certain things. Yet if you pepper throughout the agreement, it talks about how X is going to be charged on the front end and not distributed over weeks, but like ELD, I think they charge like $800 off the first settlement. That's insane. Off the first settlement, but that's what some of these contracts are showing, and they're just not.
And I would think that would be the one that you would need the most as you're getting started with somebody, that you would need that money for fuel and operation, The other thing, if your factor company tells you that they're not factoring this broker's loads, but the broker's offering quick pay, I'm so against that right now. If the broker says no, we're not factoring this invoice, and then the broker offers quick pay, there's a reason they're not factoring those invoices, guys. It's not because they just didn't like the cover. I mean, there's a reason that they've said we're not factoring these loads. Take that hint.
Yeah,
but it's such a good rate. If it's too good to be true, it is.
I have to temper that statement just a little bit, Jenny. What I'm seeing when it comes to factoring companies is that if the broker's been in business for less than a year, then most factoring companies aren't working with them anyway, just because of the lack of experience.
The new credit, right? Lack of credit, right? I got
that. So in those cases, buyer beware. Okay. In those cases,
you're right.
You're going to be asking quick. Yeah. Now a reputable broker who has cash in their pockets, okay, and who's intending to pay, a lot of them will do a 50-50 type thing. But that's brokers. When we're talking about carriers, these carriers, if they're leasing you on within the 15-day period, they already got paid. Oh, I promise you, they already got paid because they factored that stuff. And when they factored that stuff, they got paid within a couple of days. So they've been sitting on your money, Mr. Owner-Operator. Now, the most common thing I've seen in legitimate owner-operator contracts, is usually pay on a weekly basis, usually paying 1 week in arrears, and that's perfectly normal because you're still within the 15-day window. But you have to keep up with it. Now, one of the things that the statute will also tell you is that if you are paid on a percentage basis, you, owner operator, are entitled to see the original rate confirmation. Abso-freaking-lutely. The carrier cannot hide that information from you in any way, shape, or form. And if you see that the carrier is doctoring that information when they send it to you, that's a problem. Just walk away. Just walk away. You know, if the contract, if the carrier tells you, oh, well, this is a contract we have, and you're operating on the contract. Okay, give me a copy of the contract, please. You've got a right to it. If you're getting paid a percentage, you've got a right to it. And I think a lot of these owner operators don't understand exactly what their rights are when they're dealing with a lease on carrier. At the end of the day, I do think that's the big problem. But this regulation, 49 CFR 376.12, is the answer. And if you're a carrier who's has a lease on program, you better have scrubbed everything against this regulation, because the very first thing that a broker is going to do when they compare your stuff and realize that you're not following the regulation, do you know what they're going to accuse you of? Double brokering. Illegal brokerage. Hands down, every single time. I see it all the time. It's going to happen. Make sure you have everything accounted for. And oh, by the way, we're not done the list. I've not gone through the whole list. Copies of the lease. Copies of the lease have to be there. There have to be at least 3 copies of any lease. Jenny, do you know who have the 3 copies? You're muted, by the way. Jenny may have frozen. I think she froze. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and answer that. There are only there are 3 people who must have copies of the lease. Okay. You're with me again? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So who are the 3? There's 3 copies.
The carrier company that you're leasing onto.
Right.
The driver that's leasing onto that carrier company.
The owner operator. Yeah.
And your factor.
Oh, well, the factor can get a copy. The factor can get a copy. Even the insurance company, they can get a copy. But the 3 copies, the 3rd copy is the copy that sits in the truck. Okay, the owner operator probably has in their lockbox or whatever at home, in their strong box, wherever they keep important papers. That's fine. You absolutely positively must have a copy in the truck. Absolutely. You know, and if you don't have a DOT binder sitting in your truck, guys, you are asking for trouble. Okay, but that should be in your DOT binder. Hi there, disembodied head.
Yeah. Hi.
Oh, all we see is a disembodied head floating over top of your coffee table.
I didn't see it. I think that there's a ghost in the room.
Well, then I guess instead of being a double broker bounty hunters, we're going to be the double broker ghost hunters. I don't know, but yeah, no, you guys, you got to have a copy of the contract. DOT will be looking for a copy of the contract if they ever pull you over. And there are also shippers who are very smart about these things, who will ask for a copy of the contract if you show up and the name on the side of your truck doesn't match the name that they were expecting. They'll be looking for a lease on contract to verify it. And if you can't provide it, you're SOL. They won't load you. Oh, let's see. What other fun stuff
this goes back to, don't be checking in under somebody else's name. Don't be, because that's where you're going to get hung up. So if the name that is on is on your lease, the company you're leasing onto, that should be the name of the company that you're using the DOT number, an MC number for, that you're hauling for. I don't know why I had that situation with the one client that, they leased on with this company, but the rate con had this company on. I mean, and
There
none of
are
them were hers. So
yeah.
that's really bad.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There are two more elements here that have to be addressed. Two more elements that need to show up in the
Mhm.
contract per this guidance. Escrow. Now, I know of a lot of carriers who maintain an escrow account for their owner operators, and they maintain it for all sorts of different reasons. And per regulation, you can do it for all sorts of things, but you need to define what it's going to be for. If it's going to be for unexpected maintenance and stuff like that, extra insurance, permits, whatever, that needs to be clearly defined because in any escrow situation, those funds have to be held in trust. They have to be held separately, and they have to be held in an interest-bearing account. And oh, by the way, the owner-operator who's paying into that escrow is owed interest. Now, this is one of the things that any contract that I've looked at that had talked about escrow, I've never seen it talked about interest before. But then this is in the regulation. I love this. Not only does the carrier required to pay interest on the funds that's in escrow, and it's supposed to be paid minimum quarterly. Not only that, but the regulation actually defines what the minimum level of interest is on those escrow funds. It's the minimum interest is defined by the average yield on treasury bills on the first date of the interest period. Oh, don't you wish you were a carrier doing this and had an escrow account and had to calculate that every time? There are rules.
I wonder why people like Sean May have to defraud people when you've got all these rules out there that they spell it out for you, folks.
The problem is the fact that a lot of these owner operators, and guys, I'm not a hater. I'm not going to hate on you, okay? But these owner operators don't read the contract. Now, look, y'all know I'm a dispatcher, okay? And I sit there and I do set up packages all day long, and I see the same contracts over and over again when it comes to broker carrier agreements. I see it all the time. Do I read every word in that contract? No, because most of it's boilerplate. Do I look for certain things in there? Absolutely. But it's still a skim, okay? And I guarantee these owner operators, all they're doing at most, they skim the contract. I bet the only thing they look at is how much are they going to get paid. Is probably the only thing they ever stop to look at. You got to look at all the meat in the middle because that is where they get you, especially if they're a fraudulent one who's sitting there hiding behind their contract language. That's where it all is. And if it's not addressed in their contract, they're doing something wrong. You don't want to work with them. Vet them. Can't say that enough. And escrow also.
This is based on relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
Go ahead, John.
Absolutely. The one last thing, escrow is returned to a carrier, to an owner operator, within 45 days of contract termination. Less authorized deductions. Okay, and clearly Jenny has dropped out again. Boy, her internet connection is really killing her today. It's like me a couple of weeks ago. So escrow, if there's an escrow account involved, please look at the regulation closely. Make sure all the elements of the regulation are addressed in the contract. I saved the best for last because this is where we see the most fraudulent activity in a owner-operator relationship. My favorite section of this regulation deals with insurance. Now, I have asked, I don't know how many different carriers, how they deal with insurance for their owner-operators, and I get a million different answers. But if you read the regulation, it's actually very clear on whose responsibility is whose when it comes to insurance. The carrier is responsible for all coverages that are required under 49 USC 13906, which, to summarize, would be your vehicle liability and your cargo coverage. So let me repeat that again. The carrier, the guy you're leasing onto, is responsible for the liability and the cargo. Now, with that being said, I do want to make sure that it's crystal clear for an owner operator. The carrier can require you to pay a portion of the premiums. What the law specifies is that the carrier carries the insurance on their policy. Okay, so if you sit there and say, "Oh, well, my carrier forces me to pay $200 a week, for the coverage," well, they can do that. It needs to be specified in the contract, but they can do that. Okay, but they better be providing you coverage. If you are an owner operator, not only should the carrier be providing you a COI and proof of insurance and insurance cards, but I would highly recommend that any owner operator call the insurance provider and verify the validity of those documents. When we come across scammers who are stealing owner operators' money and putting them to pasture, one of the things that we see through all of them is that they are falsifying insurance documents. They're committing insurance fraud and not paying for the coverage for the owner operator. We've actually seen owner operators get into accidents and then finally learned that they were never covered in the first place. And then they're stuck with the bill. Oh, and their carrier's not paying them. Oh my God, the craziness that's going on. Vet your carrier. If you're an owner operator, vet the carrier you are working with. Make sure they are doing it right. Make sure your VIN number is protected. Make sure you are identified as a covered driver on the policy. When it comes to the extra stuff like bobtail coverage and all, again, the contract needs to specify who's responsible for it, but there's no requirement as to the carrier must cover that or the owner operator must cover that. It needs to at least be
dog basket.
That is probably one of the biggest fraudulent actions I ever see from a lot of these carriers who have owner operators. And it's what I see is the first thing that they start cutting costs on when they're up against the wall. They start skimping on the insurance requirement, gambling that nothing is going to happen. And it's a gamble. The worst part is it's not just a gamble for the carrier, but it's a gamble for the owner operator who thinks that they've got coverage. And turns out they really don't. The case that you were working, Jenny, was there any kind of insurance issues? And I think Jenny froze again. I think we're going to wait for a dry day to bring Jenny on. You're having all kinds of issues with your ISP.
Yeah, well, normally, so the fiber comes to my house, and they actually told me I'm very lucky I even get signal out here. But it's because of my windows that I do. But lately, the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's just kind of been, mediocre.
I have excellent coverage where I am. And for about a week, I was having similar problems. In fact, we ended up canceling a show that I did once because I couldn't get a signal. On the last show that I did, I had Dale Prax and Jeff on as well, Jeff Dickinson from the Freight Fraud Task Force. And I cut out. I cut out for like 10 minutes. They basically kept running the show without me.
Kate and I did that for you that one day. You were gone for forever. We just went on and we kept the show going, and pretty soon John joins us like right at the end.
When you guys do this live, if you guys ever get into doing videos like this and you do it live, this is one of the fun things you have to deal with doing live shows, and it is a lot of fun. That's what the regulation has out there for dealing with owner operators. And whenever we see an owner operator getting screwed over by a carrier, the most common thing we see is that they didn't read the contract or the contract is insufficient. So if you are looking to lease on as an owner operator to a carrier, this is the regulation on your screen there that you want to look at. This is the regulation you want to compare that contract to make sure that everything is addressed in there. And in addressing those issues, you'll very quickly determine whether or not that's somebody you want to do business with. But I got to tell you, Jenny, when I had carriers leased onto my authority when I was a carrier, I met them face to face because I wanted to look at the equipment. I wanted to see what it is that I was leasing. I didn't want to just trust that they had equipment and everything was good to go, because that door swings both ways, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a carrier and you're bringing somebody on, you want to make sure you're doing the right thing for your business too. Because at the end of the day, if you are a legitimate carrier and you're bringing these people on and you're spending a lot of money doing it, you don't want them to destroy your business because they have crap equipment. And I've made that mistake. I brought on a guy who's running a flatbed. His flatbed was old. It needed work. And he got 6 out of service violations in a single stop. Man, it beat the crap out of me. My insurance went up. It caused all kinds of issues. Oh my God, I will never do that again. I learned. But I'm telling you guys this because I want you to learn from somebody who's been through this. Make sure you meet the people that you're doing business with. Make sure you know exactly who it is you're doing business with, because you affect each other. You affect each other's future. You affect each other's livelihood. And I would rather sit there and look somebody dead in the eye across from the table from me over lunch to sit there and determine, am I talking to a guy who's lying to me, or am I talking to a guy who's really out to help protect my interests and make some money at the same time? But the proof is in the pudding, guys. It's in the contract. Read your contracts. Read your contracts. A scammer's going to pepper all these little things throughout it. Are they all addressed? Make sure you find it all. Ask questions. I can't get off my soapbox on this issue. It drives me insane seeing this stuff. You're muted, by the way, Jenny. Jenny, you're muted.
I'm getting
there.
it.
You go.
So this goes back to the building. There's the head. The head was there.
Yep.
This goes back to the building relationships. And you have to talk to these people. Carriers call up and say, how much you got on load? Okay, that's a click. You're not even asking any questions that go with it. Like, what are you doing? Brokers aren't asking carriers the right questions. You've got to build the relationship, or that's what you get taken advantage of.
Both Jenny and I are part of the Freight Fraud Task Force, and you guys have heard us talk about this before, and you're going to hear us talk a lot more about it. In fact, we're going to be starting yet another show specifically for the Freight Fraud Task Force in coming weeks. And one of the things that I want to point out to everybody is audit and education. You need to make sure you're doing the right things for yourself. And if you think you're doing the right things, are you using those tools properly? Are you looking for the right stuff in the contracts? Are you doing everything the way it's supposed to be? And we are assembling groups of experts who can help guide carriers and brokers through these kinds of processes. You're going through an owner-operator type relationship. We can help guide you through the agreement to make sure that you're doing all the right things. But one thing that I never see anybody do, and I wish everyone would do it, and I did it when I was a carrier, is references. Brokers ask for references from carriers when in new setups. In some cases, I know they usually see that through RMIS and whatnot. But references are a great way to sit there and determine who's good, who's bad. I like getting a carrier's driver list, their lease on list, and I will randomly call 3 people who are on that list. I'll randomly call 3 people who are active and 3 people who are no longer active, because, oh, by the way, carriers, when a driver is no longer working for you, they stay on your driver list. I want to say it's for a year. So I want to talk to drivers who are there, and I want to talk to drivers who have left. And I want to see, are there any flags? Are there any issues I need to be worried about? Did they shut off the fuel card, or did the fuel card not work? Did we having issues getting paid? There's so many things that owner-operators can do to vet these people. They're just not taking the time and the energy to do it the right way. And if they take the time and energy, they will realize that they're actually working with good people, and they will get things right.
We have a question from the crowd. Are carriers able to upcharge actual fees if the registration, insurance, drug consortium, compliance, etc.? Are they supposed to actually only bill you or deduct actual costs with proof?
That is actually specified in here. That goes back in under the chargeback statutes. Okay, in the contract, they should specify what they can charge back for. Now, if they sit there and they say something like any additional expense unforeseen that the carrier bore at the response or at the that's responsible to the carrier, they can have a blanket statement like that built into there, but it needs to show up. It needs to be in the contract still. It has to be in there. And it needs to be discussed.
Folks, read your contracts. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't count.
That is, at the end of the day, the key. I mean, take it from Jenny and Bob. She works in collections. And if you think that, oh, I'm owed this because I'm told I'm owed it, well, there's a couple things we're going to stop and look at. We're going to look at the rate confirmation. We're going to look at the contract. We're going to look at your contract with the owner-operator. We're going to look at those things and tell you whether or not you're actually entitled to it. But it requires reading your contract. At the end of the day, that's what it requires. Now, are there owner-operators that may have all these fun things sitting in their contracts? Yes, they are. They're in there. They may be hidden, but they're in there. You got to read it.
And the thing is I don't care if the contract is written on a napkin or a piece of paper or it's typed up. If it's signed by both of you, it's binding.
And it needs to be signed.
Don't tell me I don't have a contract. Don't tell me I don't have a contract. If you don't have a contract, then you're not running legally anyways. Stop.
Yeah,
Stop doing these things that aren't getting you paid.
I don't care if the carrier is your brother and you're coming on as an owner-operator. There better be a freaking contract. It doesn't matter whether you're family. There has to be a freaking contract. Make sure there is a contract. Oh, oh, Sage.
There's one in every crowd. There's one in every crowd.
That there is. There always is. We're getting up towards the top of the hour here. I apologize. We started late with it. That we've had a couple of issues throughout the day today. But the key, not necessarily you, Jenny. I wasn't calling you out. Jeez, come on.
Yeah, you were.
No,
he didn't go,
God,
it's
no.
Jenny's fault, but he was meaning me.
I've been stuck on the phone all day. I've been dealing with all sorts of stuff. So I started late, but that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is, if you are an owner-operator and you're looking to lease onto a carrier, what have I said 20 times already today? Read the contract. There has to be a contract. A contract must exist. That contract must address all the items that you see in the regulation there on your screen, 49 CFR 376.12. If those items are not addressed, the contract is not good. It's not legally sufficient as a lease on agreement. So make sure you familiarize yourself with this regulation. Make sure you familiarize yourself with the entire contract that the carrier is putting before you. Make sure you meet the carrier. Make sure you get references and know who it is you're doing business with before you put your John Hancock on the dotted line.
Or your John Quintero or your Jennifer, whatever it is. Also, if anybody needs any collections help, you can reach us at collections@vigilanttransport.com. If you need a dispatcher, I happen to know somebody, American dispatcher, that can help you out. If you need whatever you need, just reach out. Just call our name. We'll be there.
We don't make it hard to find us in any way, shape, or form. As you know, I would throw Jenny's email on here, but it's not there. But collections at vigilanttransport.com is how you get a hold of Jenny. You can get me, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, at jcantera at stopthescampodcast.com. You can also get Kate at kprice at stopthescampodcast.com. We don't make it hard for you to find us. If you are looking for the latest news in anything having to do with trucking, we highly recommend
Wait, I know an insurance
truckingnewshub.com.
guy. Anybody that needs insurance, I know the guy. I know the
Uh-oh.
guy. Like, I can get you the hookup. That's Sage Outcast. He was gonna get me if I didn't say it. It was gonna be turned out of the Discord.
Well, yeah. Sage, you just got a plug. You just got a plug on my show. Congratulations, there, buddy.
And he's very knowledgeable. He's been a broker. He's been a driver. He's very knowledgeable about the industry. If you need an insurance quote, I know the guy.
We actually have lots of connections for other insurance people also, because
Yeah,
I
we
know a
do.
bunch of them are watching. So lots of love to all my friends out there.
We have connections to factors. We have connections to people. We have connections. Look, just try us.
And one of the things about being a fraud fighter in this industry is if we tell you that we've got a connection for something, we tell you that because we've used them, we've vetted them, we've put them through the paces. We know that they know what the heck they're doing and they won't steer you wrong. So if we make a recommendation out here, folks, it is not a paid endorsement. The only paid endorsement that exists is actually through our good friends at AccuBid Pro. Good old AccuBid Pro. Yeah. So again, if you are new or you're a veteran in this industry and you have no idea what your cost per mile is, you've got a problem. But AccuBid Pro's got a solution.
Tired of spending hours bidding on loads and second-guessing your profits? Introducing AccuBid Pro, the mobile app designed for the everyday owner-operator. We simplify load bidding, making it fast, accurate, and stress-free. Know your operating costs up front to ensure every load is profitable. Plus, for a limited time, enjoy a 30-day free trial. Stop guessing and start earning. Download AccuBid Pro today, available now in the App Store. Bid better with AccuBid Pro.
All right, Jenny, you got any last-minute plugs you want to make before we wind this down?
Just people, just build relationships and reach contracts. Build relationships, reach contracts. Please. It makes it very difficult for me to get your stuff collected when your name is nowhere on any of the paperwork.
Well, folks, as you know, we are usually live Mondays, 1 p.m. Central Time on all the lounge media, social media outlets. Next week, however, we may be taking the week off. I need to talk to Jenny, or not Jenny, but I need to talk to Kate about that. Because let's face it, next week is Memorial Day week, and it is a federal holiday. And I don't know of anybody who's actually working that day. I think that's one of the only holidays in the year, that Thanksgiving and Christmas, where warehouses are all universally closed. Yeah, I intend to enjoy a 3-day weekend this coming weekend. God knows I freaking need it. Maybe I need to rethink going to the beach. Wife and I were talking about going to the beach. Maybe I need to rethink that one. Memorial Day weekend at the beach. That's not always fun here in Florida. Anyway, yeah. Please make sure you also watch out for the Freight Fraud Task Force. That's the hashtag. I believe they have just revealed our logo on LinkedIn over the weekend. So be sure to check that stuff out. The Freight Fraud Task Force is officially live on June 1st, but we are already up and running and doing things. We're working on education programs. We are working on audit programs. We are working on investigations. And as we come up with some results, then we'll start sharing them. Because let me tell you something, as a fraud fighter, the worst thing you can do is tell people how you are doing it. We don't want the bad guys to know how. We just want them to know that we got them, after they've been arrested, after they're in a courtroom. Yeah, we want to make sure we just get them. And that's what we're after. We're going to be going after these guys. Folks, stay safe out there. Yes, it is a holiday weekend, which means fraud is going to be on the rise this weekend. Pay close attention to your paperwork. Pay close attention to your BOLs and your rate confirmations. Know who it is you're doing business with. And whatever you do, don't let scammers
Don't
take
let
you
scammers take
for a
me for a ride. I love that. Thank you.
Oh, folks, take care of yourself. Double Broker Bounty Hunter here.
John and I love
We'll
that
see
fun.
you later next week. Take care, y'all.